Good evening. Once again, my name is Joe Imbriano, candidate for Fullerton City Council. I had this pulled because cell tower siting seemed to be an issue that almost got some good people thrown in jail on false pretenses. But I wanted to ask the city not to approve this easement and to do everything in its power to protect the public by fully investigating the major disparity between the FCC guidelines and the documented scientific evidence that has been presented to all of you multiple times, including the appeal from the 200 scientists to the World Health Organization and the United Nations to address the safety standards that the the exposure guidelines that the FCC has put forth, and you're all operating under the pretenses of. Just a bit of vernacular clarification. Exposure guidelines are not safety standards by the very definition. And as a matter of fact, the FCC is not a healthcare agency. It doesn't have a medical doctor on its entire payroll. So to have any implication of safety from their exposure guidelines is a terribly misinformed understanding and a very poor decision to be made. Austria is a very civilized country. It's very advanced medically. Their federal agency has exposure guidelines that are 100 million times lower than the FCC's. I think that says quite a bit. I mean, there are a lot of different countries that have varying standards with respect to electromagnetic exposure standards. And with respect to your purview on the council, these sightings are going to continue to come. And to just completely ignore the other ways out of this, you can make a proprietary business decision to say no to these. These carriers do not need all of these locations right now. They're basically just driving their stakes into the ground because it's a gold rush for collocation and more antenna placement for more profits. This letter that was sent to the library is directly related to this subject, and I would ask that this be agendized. All of you were in receipt of this. You'll all be in receipt of it again. Once again, we need to educate the public on what you're doing to them, and your ignorance in your actions is not acceptable. I know there are some on this council that have voted against these towers, and I commend you for that. You have used common sense, and you've used basic knowledge to circumvent these edicts that are coming from these telecom companies that own the research and scientific apparatus, lock, stock, and barrel. We are under attack. It's a wireless agenda, ladies and gentlemen. Wireless is very dangerous. It is not your friend. Autism rates, infertility rates, cancer rates, ADHD, all kinds of health problems are directly attributable to this. If you just open your eyes and look at the information that's out there, I'll present this to Lucinda for entry into the public record and request that it be agendized. Thank you.
Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak about this? I'll bring it back to council then.
I'll move the recommendation.
Okay. I'd second it.
I had a question for Director Hoppy. At least I'm going to direct it to him. Maybe he can answer it. This particular easement, I don't see any language that specifies. Of course, there's the Exhibit A and B, which I do appreciate. But there's no language that I see that expressly requires that the equipment, the electrical equipment, be underground. Do we know if it's intended to be underground or above ground?
There was no requirement to underground it.
Do we currently have above ground utilities there?
On the park, do you remember, Hugo? There's overhead power lines, but I don't know if it's not like the whole area has been undergrounded as part of an underground utility district. But I don't recall if there's a specific transformer pad in the area of the park itself.
The agenda letter says that Edison is asking